So hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today on today's webinar about how to start your organizational purpose or get that project started. I'm Brian Edwards. I'm a consultant here at Habanero. I also happen to run our products and services, and I'm here today with Habanero's president, Stephen Fitzgerald, who's going to be joining me in an interview format on this webinar. So thanks for joining me today, Stephen.
Happy to be here.
So to set the stage for today's conversation, I'll be interviewing Stephen about your thoughts and feelings on how organizations can start a organizational purpose project, what's going to be the catalyst to get them going, what should they be looking out for. We did just recently have a webinar where we shared how we helped Arc'teryx roll out their purpose and values, but one of the things we didn't cover in that webinar was, what was the impetus for them to even look at refreshing their purpose as an organization? What was the work we did to help them get through that part of the project? So that's right. A little bit about what today is. So Stephen, it's great to get to sit and chat with you today. You've been working on a few purpose projects lately, and I know that you also were in the Arc'teryx project, helping out with their personal purpose. Yep. Are you ready to illuminate this area?
Let's give it a try.
Okay, great. Thanks. So maybe we'll start with yourself. We'll go really simple. Maybe have you introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Stephen Fitzgerald. I'm the president of Habanero Consulting Group and one of the co-founders of it.
Great. And what brought you into this world of purpose and organizational purpose?
Yeah, for us, it actually started within Habanero, and this is going back a number of years, maybe almost a decade, where we in our testing, in our employee survey testing, and I think at that time we were using Gallup Q12 as our methodology for understanding how the organization was going. We were starting to realize that there was a bit of a gap in people's emotional resonance or connection with the organization. So we zoomed in pretty quickly at that time on the idea that we weren't as clear about our purpose as an organization as we needed to. So we started a purpose journey then for ourselves, and that was a really rich learning environment for a lot of us, not just in the how of purpose, but also the impact of it in the organization and people's lives.
Great. It's a good context for why this is important to us. Would you mind sharing ours?
Yeah. So before I actually talk about the purpose statement, I'll explain it as we are deeply concerned about the fact that roughly 7 out of 10 people in our part of the world in North America really don't like what they do for a living. They show up at jobs that they have low motivation or frankly they hate in some cases, and this not only has a massive impact on the productivity of our economy, but I think much more significantly this is a massive impact on society. People who have bad career lives tend to have not very great lives. So our reason for being as an organization, the dent we want to make in the world, is to really make an impact on that. We want to help create organizations that provide the opportunity for people to build great careers and thus build great lives. So that's what we're all about. So we articulate that as Habanero is passionate about helping people and organizations thrive. So that's our statement is the people and organization thriving part of it.
And as we know, the statement is just maybe one way of articulating your purpose. So on this topic of purpose, then maybe let's go a little bit meta and describe what is organizational purpose to you. What is a purpose?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of ways to describe it, but the idea of purpose is really that there's this kind of emotional ball of energy sitting inside of an organization or a group of people, and it connects with people's aspirations and their dreams and what they really care about in the world. And so purpose is really the why that organization exists, why it gets together, and it connects to the dent or the change it wants to make in the world. So it's this sort of long, way in the distance North Star that everything's oriented or should be oriented towards in the organization. And it helps people find emotional resonance within them and their career and the things they do and the thing that's bigger than them in the organization. So meaning comes from being connected to something bigger than yourself, and purpose is one of those opportunities for people to connect with that.
Right.
And I find this kind of a helpful point of comparison because people understand readily what a vision is. A vision is where we're going. It sort of could be a finish line or a place we're getting to. So vision is very tangible. It appeals to the brain. Purpose is more emotional. It appeals to the heart. So purpose gives vision emotional resonance. Vision gives purpose tangibility.
Right. So on that thread, an organizational purpose really comes to life through its people, ultimately.
Yes, absolutely. The people inside the organization and the people outside the organization too, they all conspire to bring that purpose to life. It's something everyone is largely subconsciously getting involved in and belonging to, almost like a movement.
So because of that, I would guess you would obviously say this isn't just a marketing tool for organizations.
No, and it's dangerous to enter into it thinking about a marketing tool or even an element of a brand. To me, it's the basis of the business, and it's absolutely critical, I think, to build a strong brand and strong marketing strategy to start with purpose, to really be clear about what that is, because that's how you create authenticity in your business and all your relationships. But it's not an output as a marketing tactic or strategy. It's
Right.
an input as the kind of life force that you'll build brand and marketing around.
So you may land with something that resonates in the market, but that's not the point.
Yeah, that's a great question. The idea is to create something that really is meaningful for the people inside the organization, not a marketing slogan.
Right. And you mentioned vision, and then vision being distinct and different. What I find in organizations is sometimes there's a lot of messiness around these terms. They're unclear around what is a purpose versus what's a vision versus what are values in the organization. Maybe we could just spend a couple minutes on vision and values. Just talk about what those are too. What's a vision to you in an organization?
Yeah, so vision, as I mentioned before, it's this place to get to. It's orienting, but what's really important about a vision is it's a choice. We feel purpose is something that exists in the organization, and it's a process of bringing that forward and understanding it. Whereas once you understand your purpose and you get really clear about what's the best way to live our purpose every single day, that's very orienting for you to understand where you should go as an organization. So vision is a strategic choice about where to go to. If you're doing a great job, you really understand your purpose and you orient your vision around that purpose.
Right. And values, where do they fit in?
Yeah, so values, I love the definition that values are forged through the privileges and challenges we have in our lives. So values end up growing in an organization based on the experiences that organization has. And it's not only the awful, terrible experiences, but the amazing ones as well. Like purpose, there has to be a real authenticity to values. You can't go and design a purpose and values based on what your aspirations are. It has to be what's lived and felt in the organization.
Right. So you wouldn't want to. Sorry to interrupt you there. You wouldn't want to approach this with well, we're not this way, so let's create a purpose that.
Right. It's not an aspiration. The more the bigger the gap between the espoused values and espoused purpose and what people actually live and feel, that creates a real dissonance in the organization.
Right. So we've been thinking about purpose for quite a long time, but I think it could also be seen as trendy right now. I would guess I would love you to comment on that. Like, why is purpose so important right now?
I feel that organizations are figuring out the value of it, and it breaks my heart a little bit you're right, it is sort of trendy right now, but it breaks my heart a little bit that it could be thought of as fashion. To me, it's the central fundamental core of any organization, particularly business. This isn't a trend, and it shouldn't be thought of as a trend. To me, we're entering into an era where business in general is becoming more humanistic, and that's being driven by the need for businesses to create different environments for people to be successful in. So business success is much more driven today from the performance of the people inside the organization. And performance of the people inside the organization is really driven by their ability to live out their personal purpose and have that connected to the organization's purpose. So this idea of businesses being more competitive and needing to perform on a global scale in global markets is, I think, driving the need for organizations to get clear about what purpose is, where they're going, and what they're doing, because otherwise there's not sustainable growth, there's not sustainable performance. And to me, that's the deep, meaningful rationale for why purpose is becoming more important.
Right. That's amazing. And since we went there, let's just go into that a little bit more. So we talked about purpose helping drive personal alignment, helping drive the productivity with people in the organization. Can you talk about when organizations have a great purpose, what shows up? What does it look like if you go into an organization that's purpose driven?
Yeah, so I mentioned the friction or the dissonance between when the espoused ideas of the organization don't match the lived experiences.
Yeah.
I can tell you in Habanero, we've gone through quite a significant transformation over the last 3 years, and it's been everything. It's been fun and scary and harrowing and exciting, and I can tell you that the strength of our culture. And that culture being moored on our values and our purpose, we wouldn't have been near as successful as we have been today. So it's been this amazing case study, being in the middle of seeing how in this period of time when we're working really hard to go from being one thing to being another thing, everyone being so aligned at an emotional level, like inside their core, around really what we're trying to do and where we're trying to get to. It's had such an amazing impact on our ability to be successful. And so for me, we see this in the organizations we work with, but living it in our own organization over the last little while has been a really powerful experience for me personally.
So in that description, there's sort of an X factor to it that comes into play that creates the potential for performance in an organization. Is that
right? If you really believe in human beings and the amazing things we can do, you realize that you're not going to script everyone's day as a manager and tell them what to do on an hour by hour basis. But if you can really align people deep down inside with and around the things that, find the common things we all care about, they'll do amazing things that will just blow your mind that you never thought possible or couldn't have conceived of. So it's this ability to really harness the amazingness that exists in people in a way that goes way beyond, giving them a little autonomy, a little leeway to think for themselves. It goes way beyond that. It's actually connecting at the core of people for them to do amazing things.
That's a great wrapper for why. I don't think I can ask you anything else as to why organizations should pursue this as a potential agenda in their organizations. Other than that, it seems a pretty powerful way to reason to do it. So let's move into the what a little bit. Let's say you're an organizational leader and you want to move a purpose project forward. Perhaps you're noticing in your organization there's some potential there for this. What do you do? What's the first step?
So there's a couple things to do in parallel. So based on widespread of organizations of many different sizes and ages and natures, I find that there's kind of two parallel paths to follow. One is building a little bit of shared mindset about what it is and the value of it in the organization, particularly at the leadership level. So I find people go into a little bit of an education campaign and basically recruiting hearts and minds of their peers in the organization or leaders of the organization to build a little bit of momentum around the idea. I think that's really important. This is like you can't do this to an organization that's not highly willing to step into it, and that starts with leadership. This is an opt-in kind of thing.
So in an education campaign, it would be helping people understand the potential for it, talk about what potential impacts it could have on the organization, finding like minds around this idea. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so there are stories from other organizations, and inspiring stories are really helpful, but the other parallel track is really supportive as well, and that's getting in and starting to gain some confidence and build some data around what's really going on in the organization. So the fancy term we use is empathetic research, but it's finding ways to go in and talk to groups of people or individuals and really find out why they show up at work every day, what their experience is like, how they experience the ideas of the organization, and how that's impacting their performance in their career. And not surprisingly, you don't sit down with people and ask them those questions. There is an art to putting people in a position of psychological safety and really getting them to express their experience of the organization, and then pulling those ideas out, finding the themes for those that relate to purpose and building story around that. So once you start to build those stories and you can filter those back into the other stream of kind of building followership around the idea, that becomes really powerful, because you're saying, this group of people in an organization, this is what's affecting them. This is what's holding them back. This is the friction, and this is what it could be for them if we could solve this problem. And that can be really motivating inside the organization.
Right. So you're not necessarily trying to figure out if people are aligned with purpose or not aligned, but you're trying to understand is what's the potential in the organization to bring people in alignment, and where are they?
That's right.
Aligned?
Yeah, that's well said.
Yeah. And I'm curious, do we see any particular owner in an organization for this? Is there a particular business department more than another that would typically own this, like HR or perhaps the executive team? What have you seen there?
So that's a great question, and our experience has been no. There tends to be one or a small number of people who are sort of the moral leaders of the idea. One organization, it was a environmental sustainability person. In other organizations, it's the CEO, and in other organizations, it's people in the people and culture role, or formerly HR. So there are examples all over the place. It's more about the person, their moral authority, and their ability to first, be passionate about the idea, but second, create some momentum of influence around the idea.
That's great. So it's refreshing that it could come from anywhere in an organization. So you don't have to sit and wait if you're someone who is that cultural leader in the organization to hope that HR steps in. This is something that anyone really with enough moral authority can step in and create movement on.
Absolutely. I really firmly believe that. And there's in the organizations we work in at all levels in the organization, leaders show up and they develop a sense of purpose. And sometimes it can be quite localized, and the word purpose is never used, but that's exactly what's happening, and it can be really powerful even at that level.
So let's say you've done everything that you've said. You started to socialize the idea, and you found some like minds in the process, and you perhaps have gone out and started to collect some of these stories where the organization has some potential for it. What do you do next? Like, is the next thing a project? Like, what's a purpose journey look like? Is it a lifelong journey? Does it end? How would you describe what that next step is?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to realize is it's not a design exercise. We feel the better way to describe it is most of the work is more like archeology than design. And differentiating between the purpose of the organization and the purpose statement, which is this super important shorthand group of words that helps people really connect to the idea of the purpose. There is design in the purpose statement part of the work, but the first part is really more like archeology. It's about going in and understanding the lived experiences of people in the organization. And so with that in mind, the first step is really to get a broader lay of the land and do, I would say, a wider, not necessarily super deep cut of the organization to find out what people's lived experiences are. So that brings me to one thing that's really important. I think you can get some good directional ideas with surveys and other tools like that, but there's absolutely no replacing direct interaction with people.
Right.
So the best formats are small workshops with, thoughtfully put together, getting people in a position where I mentioned this before, where there's psychological safety. They can open up and express their ideas, and you're creating exercises and work with them where they're more likely talking through their experience of their work rather than answering questions specifically about ideas which might be abstract to them, like values and purpose and vision and these things. It's more about getting people to talk through their experiences and the highs and the lows, and where they find frustration and friction, and where they find glory and joy. And so that's really to get going. If you do this shallower cut of the organization, you'll be in a position to really say, okay, this is what we've learned, and then you could almost build a project or a program of work out of that to sort of piece through, find out where you need to go deeper, find the other things you need to learn, and start to really pull out the themes of what the purpose is.
Right. So for Arc'teryx, we talked a little bit about this in the previous webinar, about where there was ultimately a purpose statement that was written. And I think they also created this thing called the Code of the Collective, which is other aspects or ways of looking at what would show up in the organization if they were living their purpose.
Yeah, I like to think of, at Arc'teryx we worked on purpose, values, and the Code of the Collective, and the code of the collective is this kind of clever cheat sheet or list of helpful ideas related to behaviors. And if we go by the ladder of inference, actions inform behaviors, inform beliefs. That's a deliberate effort to try and get in at the behavior level to help people be more thoughtful about how they show up in their work and with each other. And it's been a really, I think, successful idea.
So you've mentioned this a few times. This is archaeological, it's empathetic work. Maybe you can describe where you think Habanero fits into this. How have companies been using or leveraging Habanero as a lever for this, for their organization?
Yeah, I think it comes into two sort of major ways that were helpful. One is that we've been through this journey a lot. We're sort of a recognized thought leader in the people and culture space, so we bring domain expertise, and I would say actually that's part of it. What we bring is because this is so closely tied to our purpose, because we care about it so much, we are obsessed with this idea of how organizations can be better, and purpose is such a central thing in there. So I feel it sort of undersells it a little bit to say we have some expertise in this area. Like we care about this so deeply, and we're constantly looking at other organizations and talking to them about it. So we bring this kind of depth of understanding and passion for the potential of it. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, and it's quite tactical, this idea of going into the organization, having the objectivity and the deep toolkit of ways to get in and understand people, and just the kind of skills required to go in and really understand people's lived experiences. There's a lot there, right? You need to put people in a position where they can be vulnerable and express things that they may have not ever even have thought of before. And we're used to doing this with senior executives, with people in the field, with people who are really fired up and keen about things, with people who are super jaded and a month away from quitting if things don't change. And so our expertise is to be able to go in and create an environment where these people can talk from the heart and express not just therapeutic conversation, but actually express things that we can pull information and data out to draw some meaningful themes to start to really get zero in on the ideas of purpose and what matters for the organization.
So if someone were to call us today and say, hey, we'd love your help working on this personal purpose stuff, we're not exactly sure where to start, what would be the first thing we'd do?
Yeah, I think it's to sit down and have a few conversations with some key people in the organization and find out, like for me, what I really need to know early is why you care about this and what's your need for it, because maybe purpose isn't what you should be pursuing right off the bat. So just to kind of help them think through the value of it, what it can mean for the organization, and get that first kind of lay of the land in terms of where people are at, what people's experiences are with this. And that's the first thing we'd want to do really quickly.
Great. So we've covered why organizations can benefit from having an organizational purpose, the growing criticality of the purpose in organizations. We've looked at some of the symptoms in organizations of what it looks like when they don't have one.
Yep.
We talked about the team that it takes to drive these projects, what some of those first steps are. And then of course, how to engage with Habanero on this. Is there any parting thoughts that you would have on this journey for people?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We talked a little bit about the difference between the purpose, which are the ideas that people really experience, and the purpose statement, which is this shorthand for it. I think that there's a lot of utility in thinking about and planning out the experience of rolling these things out. So Arc'teryx is a great example. We timed this work with a lot of other things that were happening in the organization, and we created a moment for the organization. It was actually this incredible 2-day event where everyone in the organization got together, and we did a whole bunch of things that brought the purpose and the values and the code of the collective to life. And it was really well timed with these other things that were happening in the business, and it just created so much momentum of belief and alignment around ideas in the organization. You could really feel it there. So it was super impressive. So thinking about how you might roll it out, what's people's experience of hearing it. It's tempting to say, well, this could be an iterative process and we could just have the idea of purpose and keep refining it over time. But there's a ton of value in putting a line in the sand saying we're releasing a new purpose statement. We're going to sit down as an organization and figure out what it means to us and really get clear about how to bring it to life from this day forward. So there is some value in really thinking through the experience of the, giving it life in the organization and what that's like. Because I think if you do it right, you get a ton of other really important fringe benefits.
Right. So just reinforcing there the idea that this isn't just a statement on paper; it's much more than that. And
it's a real opportunity for momentum.
Yeah. So I'll finish this off with a few rapid fire questions. If someone were out there looking for more insight around purpose, do you have any resources that you recommend? A book that you really like, a podcast that you've listened to, or something people can Google?
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of how Jim Collins talks about it, and I feel like any business leader should be reading Good to Great once every 2 years, if they don't already have it memorized. And so to me, I find it's a continuing font of motivation around this area. But I do find as well that it's coming up, and practical experiences of people with purpose is coming up more and more. I also find, interestingly, I draw a lot of motivation looking at organizational purpose by reading and following what's going on in the personal purpose area. So that's a blossoming area right now, and people are doing some really interesting things, and there's a very strong connection between helping an individual find their personal purpose and an organization. So some of the practice and techniques are crossover quite well. So I find that a very motivating area as well.
No, that's great. Company that you admire that has a personal purpose or a purpose that you think is really driving their success?
Well, I thought that's a great question. I find Habanero's purpose very inspiring, but I do say quite sincerely that it's been so central to such a massive change for us. It's inspiring. I'm very close to it as well at Arc'teryx, but I can't believe how you go in the organization and those ideas that we worked on. It's been a couple of years now. They took root in that organization so quickly, and you could be in all sorts of different conversations there, and you hear those ideas come up in real authentic ways. Like, that just blew me away how adaptable their culture was and how they took that on. So to me, because I'm so close to those things, that those are really inspiring stories for me.
I'll let you get by on that one. And maybe the final closing thought: what are some good characteristics of someone who would be a leader in this space? Like, if I were someone in an organization that's trying to develop my capacity or capability in this area, what would I look to be building?
Yeah, I think you need to really have an authentic vision for the impact it can have in your organization. It has to start there. Like, you need a purpose for your purpose work in a way. And then there's a bunch around capability and authority and ability to influence and move people. It's not what I found in my experience is not good enough just to be really passionate and really have a strong belief in it. You also, this is a role, if you're going to take it on, that requires your ability to influence a broad range of other people. And there will be, it's not a cakewalk the whole way through. There will be some times when you're really going to have to push people, because they're going to have to make decisions, trade-off decisions that might be really difficult for them in their roles, and you need to be able to be there to support them and lead them through decisions like that. So I think people need some real leadership skills to take this on.
These are great parting thoughts for people who might be listening today and thinking about wanting to take this on. It's great. We're going to stay in a few minutes here to see if there's any questions that come in. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining for this.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, it's been great.